My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm 28 years old, and until 2 years ago, my biggest concern in life was whether I could survive another overnight shift in the ICU without falling asleep in the supply closet. I lived in a tiny apartment on the south side of Chicago with peeling paint, noisy pipes, and neighbors who argued loud enough to become part of my nightly routine. I worked 6 days a week at Mercy General Hospital, picking up overtime whenever I could because debt doesn't care how exhausted you are. Student loans, medical bills from my father's surgery, credit card balances from helping my younger brother stay in college after my parents couldn't afford it anymore. I was tired all the time. But I kept going because that's what the oldest daughters in struggling families do. We become emergency contact numbers for everyone else's problems. My father, Daniel Monroe, used to call me his responsible kid. Not because he was proud of me, because he knew I would always clean up the mess. My mother, Linda Monroe, was softer on the outside, but somehow more dangerous underneath. She had a talent for turning guilt into obligation. She could cry on command, sigh dramatically over bills, and somehow make every sacrifice feel like it wasn't enough. "Family takes care of family, Rachel," she always said. Funny how those words only worked in one direction. My younger brother, Evan, was different. Charming, funny, careless. The kind of person who could borrow money with a smile and make you feel bad for asking when he'd pay it back. Still, I loved them. That's what makes betrayal dangerous. Love lowers the alarm system. The lottery ticket happened on a Thursday night after a brutal 14-hour shift. A child had died that evening, 7 years old, car accident. I remember standing in the hospital bathroom afterward, staring at myself in the mirror, while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My mascara had smudged beneath my eyes, and I looked about 10 years older than I actually was. I felt empty. On my way home, I stopped at a gas station because I was too exhausted to cook and bought stale coffee and a turkey sandwich that tasted like cardboard. The cashier asked if I wanted a lottery ticket. Normally, I always said no. That night, I shrugged. Sure, one ticket, quick pick numbers. I shoved it into my hoodie pocket and forgot about it completely. 3 days later, I was sitting at my parents' kitchen table while my mother complained about property taxes and my father argued with customer service on speakerphone over cable charges. The TV in the background announced the winning numbers. My stomach dropped. I pulled the crumpled ticket from my wallet. First number matched, then the second, then the third. By the fourth number, my hands started shaking. By the fifth, I couldn't hear anything anymore. And when the final number matched, the room became completely silent. I remember whispering, "No way." My father looked over. "What?" I handed him the ticket. He stared at it, then checked the television, then checked again. My mother grabbed it from his hands so hard she nearly ripped it. And then she screamed. Not a joyful scream, not emotional, greedy. The kind of scream people make when they think their life just upgraded. The jackpot was $8.2 million before taxes. My father sat down slowly like his knees stopped working. My mother started crying instantly. "Oh my God," she kept repeating. "Oh my God, oh my God." Evan came running downstairs asking what happened. My mother hugged him first, not me, him. "We're saved," she sobbed. "That should have been my first warning. Not you're saved. Not Rachel's life is changed. We're saved." As if my money had already become communal property. That night turned into chaos. My father opened expensive whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. Evan started talking about sports cars within 20 minutes. My mother began discussing neighborhoods with better people. Nobody asked what I wanted, not once. At midnight, after hours of noise and celebration, my father finally sat beside me in the kitchen. His voice became serious. "Rachel, listen carefully. This changes things." I nodded slowly. "You can't trust people after this," he said. "Lottery winners lose everything all the time. People manipulate them, sue them, steal from them. I know. You need protection." That word again, protection. At the time, it sounded loving. Now I understand manipulation often introduces itself wearing concern. He continued carefully. You shouldn't manage this money alone. My mother joined us instantly like she'd been waiting nearby. We can help, she said softly. We're your parents. I should have paused. I should have asked why two people drowning in debt suddenly believed they were qualified to manage millions. But exhaustion and love make terrible financial advisors. Over the next few days, everything moved fast. Too fast. My parents insisted on secrecy. They said if people found out, our lives would become dangerous. My father recommended putting the money into a family trust, temporarily, until lawyers and accountants organized everything. He already had names ready, already had appointments lined up, already knew a financial advisor through a friend from church. Again, I ignored the warning signs because I wanted to believe my family loved me more than money. The lawyer meeting happened in a polished downtown office with leather chairs and expensive art hanging on gray walls. The attorney barely looked at me. He spoke mostly to my father. That should have terrified me. Instead, I felt relieved someone older was handling things. The trust structure sounded complicated enough that I stopped fully understanding halfway through. My father kept reassuring me, it's standard. My mother squeezed my hand. We just want you safe. I signed papers, stacks of them. Some pages I barely read because everyone kept saying time mattered. I remember asking one question. So technically, the money is still mine, right? The attorney smiled too quickly. Of course. That answer would haunt me later because technically and legally are not the same thing. Within 3 months, my life started changing, but not in the way I imagined. My parents paid off their debts first, then Evan's loans. Then suddenly my father was talking about investment opportunities. My mother started shopping constantly. Designer handbags, jewelry, luxury furniture. One afternoon she casually mentioned they were looking at beachfront property in Florida. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She was. You deserve something too, I said carefully. She smiled. Oh, honey, everything we do is for the family. Meanwhile, I was still living in the same apartment, still working overtime, still driving my old Honda with the broken air conditioner. At first, I convinced myself I was being patient and responsible. I don't need crazy things, I told Natalie, my best friend from nursing school. Natalie stared at me over coffee like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Rachel, you won $8 million. I know. So why are your parents acting richer than you? I laughed nervously. It's temporary, is it? That question stayed in my head longer than I wanted. Months passed. Then came Florida. My parents bought a massive beach house outside Naples. White walls, ocean view. Private dock. Cost nearly $2.4 million. I remember standing in the kitchen during the housewarming party while strangers drank champagne and complimented my mother's excellent taste. Nobody mentioned the fact the house existed because of me. My father slapped my shoulder proudly. Family success story, he said. Family, always family, until accountability entered the room. That night, I walked onto the balcony alone and checked my banking app for the first time in weeks. The balance looked wrong, lower than expected, much lower. I frowned and opened another account. Then another. Numbers moved between funds in patterns I didn't recognize. Transfers labeled. Asset restructuring, family allocation, real estate acquisition, managed distribution. My chest tightened. I walked back inside and found my father laughing beside the kitchen island. Dad, I said quietly, why are there so many transfers? His smile faded slightly. Accounting stuff, but why is so much missing? People nearby went silent. My mother appeared instantly. Rachel, not now. I'm just asking a question. My father's tone hardened. We've been managing everything responsibly. I know, but you don't understand high-level finances, he interrupted. That's why we protected you in the first place. Protected me, again. Only now the words sounded different, like a leash disguised as love. That night I couldn't sleep. So around 2 a.m., While everyone else was drunk or unconscious upstairs, I opened my laptop in the guest room and logged into every account connected to the trust. And for the first time since winning the lottery, I actually read the documents I signed. My blood went cold. The trust wasn't temporary. My parents were primary controllers. Large portions of the money had already been legally redirected into jointly managed family assets, including the beach house, including investment properties, including accounts I couldn't access without authorization. I sat there staring at the screen while ocean waves crashed outside the windows my money bought. Then I found the sentence that changed everything. In the event of financial instability or emotional impairment, trustees retain discretionary authority over fund distribution. Emotional impairment. I blinked slowly, then remembered something. 3 weeks earlier, after an exhausting shift, I had confessed to my mother that I'd been overwhelmed and emotionally burned out from ICU work. She hugged me tightly that night. Now I realized why she had asked so many questions afterward, about stress, sleep, anxiety, mental exhaustion. My hands began shaking. I opened another folder, then another, and there it was. A private medical evaluation request, prepared but not yet filed. Recommendation: temporary financial supervision due to emotional instability and impaired decision-making capacity. Attached notes from my own mother, describing me as fragile, overworked, emotionally compromised, unable to responsibly manage sudden wealth. I stopped breathing for a second. The room suddenly felt too small, because in that moment, standing inside the beach mansion my lottery winnings purchased, I realized something horrifying. My parents hadn't just taken my money. They were building a legal case to convince everyone I was too unstable to take it back. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I sat on the edge of the guest bed in my parents' Florida beach house with my laptop glowing against the darkness, while waves crashed outside like distant explosions. Every new document felt like another door opening into a room I was never supposed to enter. The trust agreements, the amended distributions, the authorization clauses. And hidden between pages of legal language and financial jargon was the terrifying truth. I didn't control my own money anymore. Not really. Technically, my name was attached to the trust, but authority belonged to the trustees. My parents, Daniel and Linda Monroe. The people who kept calling this protection. I opened the original filing date again. 3 days after I won the lottery. 3 days. That meant while I was still in shock, still crying from exhaustion, still believing my parents wanted to help me, they were already restructuring my future around themselves. I felt sick. I remember walking quietly downstairs around 4 in the morning because my chest felt too tight to breathe upstairs. The kitchen smelled like expensive wine and ocean air. Half-empty champagne glasses still sat beside the marble counter, evidence of celebration, or maybe evidence of theft. I poured water into shaking hands and stared out at the black ocean. Then I heard footsteps behind me, my mother. She wore a silk robe now, designer, probably bought with my money. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled softly. "You're awake early." I turned slowly. "Why do you have paperwork describing me as emotionally unstable?" Her face changed instantly. Not guilt, calculation. "You were never supposed to see that yet." Yet, that word nearly broke me. "What does that mean?" She walked closer carefully, like approaching an injured animal. "Rachel's, sweetheart, don't overreact. Answer me. You've been overwhelmed for months. You barely sleep. You work nonstop. After the lottery win, we became worried about your decision-making." I laughed once, a hollow, disbelieving sound. "My decision-making? We were trying to protect you. There's that word again." Her voice hardened slightly. "You don't understand how dangerous money is." "No," I whispered. "I think I finally understand how dangerous people become around money." That hit her. I saw it. For a split second, the performance cracked. Then she recovered. "You're exhausted. We should talk tomorrow." "No," I said. "We talk now." Lights upstairs flicked on. A moment later, my father appeared. He looked irritated more than concerned. "What's going on?" I held up my laptop. "You were preparing documents to control my finances permanently." He sighed immediately like I was being unreasonable. "Rachel, calm down. Do not tell me to calm down. You're emotional right now. Because you stole from me." His expression darkened instantly. "That's enough." The force in his voice shocked me into silence. My father rarely yelled growing up. He didn't need to. Disappointment was his favorite weapon. "You have no idea how much pressure we've been under handling this responsibility," he continued. "We sacrificed our own peace to protect your future." I stared at him, then around the kitchen. The marble counters, the ocean view windows, the luxury appliances. "Your sacrifice looks expensive." My mother stepped between us quickly. "You're twisting things." "No," I whispered. "I'm finally seeing them clearly." My father crossed his arms. "You think you can manage $8 million alone? You're a nurse, Rachel. You've never handled wealth at this level." The sentence hit like a slap, not because it was loud, because it revealed what he truly thought of me: not capable, not intelligent, just useful. Something inside me shifted permanently then. I looked at the two people who raised me and realized they genuinely believed I should be grateful while they controlled my life. "You used me," I said quietly. My mother's eyes filled with tears instantly, weaponized tears. "I can't believe you'd say that after everything we've done for you." There it was, the script. Guilt disguised as love, I grabbed my laptop. "I'm leaving." My father laughed once, cold. "Leaving where?" "My apartment. At 4 in the morning. "Yes, you're being irrational." "No," I replied. "I'm becoming difficult to manipulate." That made his face change, truly change. "Because manipulators panic the moment control slips." "You walk out now," he said carefully, "and you'll regret it." I paused. "Is that a threat?" "No," he answered. "It's reality." "You signed legal documents. You can't just undo things because you're emotional." Emotional. Again, every feeling I had became evidence against me. I left anyway. I packed before sunrise while my hands shook so badly I dropped clothes twice. My mother followed me through the hallway crying dramatically. "Please don't do this to the family." The family. Not "please don't leave," not "please let's fix this." Just "don't disrupt the system benefiting us." By 6 a.m., I was driving away from the beach house with tears blurring the highway while my phone exploded with messages. "My father, you're making a huge mistake." "My mother, please answer me." "Evan, why are you attacking Mom and Dad?" Then, finally, "You're acting crazy." Crazy, the exact word buried inside those legal drafts. I turned my phone off. Back in Chicago, reality hit harder. I scheduled meetings with independent financial attorneys. Plural, because I no longer trusted anyone connected to my parents. The first attorney spent 40 minutes reviewing the trust before leaning back slowly. "Rachel, who advised you to sign this?" "My parents." He removed his glasses. "These documents heavily favor trustee authority." "How bad is it?" He hesitated. "That depends how aggressive they're willing to be." I felt cold all over. "Meaning, if they pursue claims of emotional instability, they could delay or restrict your direct access significantly." I stared at him. "So they can legally control my money?" "Potentially." The room spun slightly. I had spent my entire life believing education protected people from exploitation. "But nobody teaches you what happens when manipulation comes wearing your mother's face." The attorney continued carefully. "You need evidence, fast." Evidence. That word became my life. I started digging into every transaction, every trust amendment, every property acquisition, every transfer connected to my lottery winnings. And the deeper I looked, the uglier it became. My parents weren't protecting the money. They were spending it like people who believed they had won the lottery themselves. Luxury vehicles, vacation packages, investment condos, designer furniture, private club memberships, and Evan. My younger brother suddenly had a new BMW luxury watches, cryptocurrency investments, and a downtown apartment he absolutely could not afford before I confronted him first. That was my mistake. He met me at a rooftop bar downtown wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Relax," he said immediately after sitting down. "Mom said you're freaking out." "I'm not freaking out. You kinda are." I slid printed transactions across the table. "You used trust money to buy a car." He barely glanced down. "It's family money." "No, it's my lottery winnings." He smirked slightly. "You really gonna become one of those rich people obsessed with money?" I stared at him in disbelief. "You're driving a $90,000 car bought with my money. And you didn't even ask me, because Dad approved it." That sentence landed like acid. Dad approved it. As if my role in my own fortune had become secondary, I lowered my voice. "Evan, they're trying to legally control me." He rolled his eyes. "Oh my God. You sound paranoid. They prepared emotional instability documentation. They're worried about you." I laughed bitterly. "No, they're worried about losing control." His expression hardened. "You know what your problem is? You always thought being responsible made you better than everyone." That hurt, because deep down I knew he'd believed that for years, every overtime shift. Every scholarship, every sacrifice. To him, my success looked like judgment. "I helped pay your college tuition," I whispered. "And I appreciated it. You never paid me back. Family doesn't keep score." Easy thing to say when you're the one benefiting, I stood. "Do you even care what they're doing to me?" He shrugged. "I think you're overreacting because for once life isn't only about you." I left before I said something unforgivable, but his words followed me all the way home, not because they were true. Because they revealed how my family saw me, not as a daughter, not as a sister, as a resource, an emotional ATM with a heartbeat. That night, Natalie came over carrying takeout and one bottle of cheap wine. She listened silently while I explained everything. The trust, the manipulation, the psychological evaluations. The spending, the betrayal. When I finished, she sat very still for a moment, then asked quietly, "Rachel, do you realize they've been grooming you for this your entire life?" I frowned. "What? You said your parents always taught you responsibility through guilt, right?" I nodded slowly. "And whenever you succeeded, they reminded you the family needed help." "Yes. And whenever you tried setting boundaries," I swallowed, "they called me selfish." Natalie leaned forward. "This didn't start with the lottery. The lottery just made the stakes bigger." That realization hit harder than anything else, because she was right. The signs had always existed. The summer job money my mother borrowed. The credit cards my father asked me to co-sign. The endless emergencies. The emotional blackmail disguised as family loyalty. I had spent years believing love meant sacrifice. My parents simply escalated the system once millions entered the picture. 3 days later, the real nightmare began. I received an official letter. Petition for temporary financial oversight review. Filed by Daniel Monroe and Linda Monroe, my own parents. Claim, concern regarding emotional deterioration, impulsive financial behavior, and inability to responsibly manage sudden wealth. I read the document 3 times before my body finally reacted. I threw up in my kitchen sink, because this was no longer manipulation behind closed doors. This was war, legal war, and the people attacking me knew every insecurity I had ever confessed to them. Every vulnerable moment, every exhausted breakdown after ICU shifts, every panic attack, everything. My mother had turned my trust into evidence. My father had turned my exhaustion into strategy. And suddenly, I understood the terrifying truth. Nobody can weaponize your pain like the people who watched you survive it. The first thing I learned about betrayal is this. It doesn't arrive all at once. It spreads slowly into every corner of your life until even ordinary things start feeling unsafe. After my parents filed the petition questioning my mental stability, I stopped sleeping properly. Every notification made my pulse spike. Every unknown number felt dangerous. And worst of all, part of me still loved them. That was the humiliating part nobody talks about when family destroys you. You can know someone is hurting you and still miss the version of them you spent your whole life needing. I sat at my kitchen table for almost an hour staring at the court filing, while rain hit the apartment windows hard enough to sound like static. The words blurred together. Emotional instability, impulsive behavior, concerns regarding judgment. Every sentence felt carefully engineered to sound loving while quietly stealing my independence. Natalie finally took the papers from my hands. "You need to stop reading this alone." I laughed weakly. "They're trying to make me legally incompetent. They're trying to scare you." "No," I whispered. "They're trying to own me." That was the moment the situation became real to me. Not emotionally real, legally real. Because if my parents convinced the court I was unstable, they could delay my financial control for years. Years. And during those years, they would continue spending my money while pretending it was for my own good. I felt trapped inside a nightmare written by people who knew exactly how my mind worked. The next morning, I met my new attorney. Her name was Vanessa Reed, 42 years old, sharp eyes, calm voice. The kind of woman who looked like she had never once tolerated manipulation in her entire life. She reviewed the filing in complete silence, then placed it down carefully. "Your parents are smarter than most financial abusers," she said. The word hit me immediately. Abusers, not controlling, not overprotective, abusive. I swallowed hard. Can they actually do this? They can try. That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be. I appreciated her honesty instantly. Vanessa didn't speak in fake reassurance. She spoke in strategy. "They're building a narrative," she explained. "A very common one." "What narrative?" "That you're emotionally overwhelmed after sudden wealth and incapable of making rational financial decisions." I laughed bitterly. "They spent millions of my money." "Yes," she said calmly, "but emotionally manipulative people rarely describe themselves accurately." Then she leaned forward slightly. "Rachel, I need to ask you something difficult." "Okay. Have you ever been treated for anxiety, depression, panic attacks, or emotional burnout?" I froze, because yes. After COVID hit the hospital years earlier, I'd struggled badly. Nightmares, panic attacks, exhaustion. I'd attended therapy for 8 months. Nothing severe, nothing dangerous, just human. But suddenly every vulnerable thing I had ever admitted felt weaponized. "Yes," I whispered. Vanessa nodded once. "Then assume they'll use it." My stomach dropped. "They can't. They absolutely can." I looked away quickly because tears were suddenly burning behind my eyes, not from shame, from violation. I had trusted my mother enough to tell her when I was struggling mentally after watching patients die for months during the pandemic. Now, she was turning that pain into legal ammunition. Vanessa's voice softened slightly. "Listen carefully to me. Having anxiety does not make you incompetent. Being emotionally exhausted does not make you unstable. But we need to prepare for them to distort everything." I nodded slowly. Then she asked the question that changed everything. "Do you have proof they're financially exploiting the trust?" "Yes." "How much?" I opened my folder. The stack of documents was nearly 3 inches thick. Transfers, luxury purchases, property records, unauthorized distributions, beachfront real estate acquisitions. Vanessa's eyebrows lifted slightly as she reviewed the paperwork. "Oh," she said quietly. "What? They're worse than I expected." That should have comforted me. Instead, it terrified me, because if even my lawyer looked shocked, how far had my parents really gone? Over the next 2 weeks, my life became evidence collection. I stopped thinking like a daughter. I started thinking like a witness. Every voicemail got saved. Every text got screenshotted. Every interaction became documentation. And the messages from my family grew uglier by the day. My mother, "We're trying to help you before you ruin your life." My father, "You're surrounding yourself with bad influences." Evan, "You need therapy, not lawyers." Therapy. As if defending myself was proof of instability. Then came the phone call that truly shattered something inside me. My Aunt Carol called one evening while I was reviewing financial records. Her voice sounded uncomfortable. "Rachel, honey, are you okay?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Well, your mother says you've been having episodes." Episodes? The word nearly made me choke. "What kind of episodes?" "She said the lottery changed you, that you stopped trusting people, that you became paranoid and aggressive." I closed my eyes slowly. Because suddenly I understood what my parents were doing. They weren't only preparing legal arguments, they were preparing social ones. They were poisoning the family narrative before court ever began. "I'm not paranoid," I said quietly. Aunt Carol hesitated. "I know that, sweetheart," but she didn't sound certain. That hurt more than if she'd accused me directly. Doubt is quieter than betrayal, and somehow crueler. After the call ended, I sat motionless for almost 10 minutes. Then finally whispered, "Oh my God, they're turning everyone against me." Natalie looked up from the couch. "No," she corrected gently. "They're turning weak people against you." That sentence stayed with me, because she was right. Strong people ask questions, weak people accept the easiest story. And my parents had created a very convenient story. Successful daughter suddenly becomes unstable after money arrives. Concerned parents step in to help. Ungrateful daughter lashes out. Simple, clean. Believable, especially because my parents knew exactly which parts of me sounded fragile. The panic attacks, the exhaustion, the stress. Things that were normal responses to trauma suddenly became courtroom material. 3 days later, I learned just how far they were willing to go. Vanessa called me at work. "You need to leave the hospital immediately." Fear hit instantly. "What happened?" "Your parents contacted hospital administration." Everything inside me stopped. "What?" "They expressed concerns regarding your emotional state and access to patient care responsibilities." I nearly dropped the phone. "They what?" "They implied your mental health may affect job performance." I couldn't breathe properly. "They tried to ruin my career." "They tried to create leverage." My hands were shaking violently now, because this wasn't about money anymore. This was punishment. I left work immediately and met Vanessa at her office. She already had copies of the communication. Reading it felt like being stabbed slowly. My mother claimed she was deeply worried about my emotional deterioration. My father questioned whether high-pressure ICU responsibilities were worsening my condition. Together, they implied I might pose a risk to myself or others. I stared at the page until the words doubled, then finally asked, "What kind of parents do this?" Vanessa answered immediately. "The kind who care more about control than love." That night I broke, not dramatically, quietly. I sat on my apartment floor beside the couch while Natalie held me and cried so hard my ribs hurt. Because money theft was one thing, but trying to destroy my career, my identity, the life I built, that crossed into something darker. "They want everyone to think I'm crazy," I whispered. Natalie brushed tears from my face. "No, they want you to feel crazy, that's different." I looked at her helplessly. "What if they win?" "They won't. You don't know that." "No," she admitted softly, "but I know this. Manipulative people usually overplay their hand eventually." She was right. Because 2 days later, my parents made a mistake. A huge one. Vanessa subpoenaed additional trust communications connected to financial advisors involved in the account restructuring. Buried inside hundreds of emails was one message from my father to the financial consultant. The subject line, "Rachel's situation." The body read, "If Rachel starts resisting the arrangement, we may need stronger documentation regarding her instability. Linda believes emotional pressure will eventually make her cooperate." I read it 3 times. Emotional pressure. Not concern, not protection, pressure. Cold, calculated, intentional. And then came the line that destroyed the last illusion I had left about my mother. "She has always been easier to manage when she feels guilty." I physically stopped breathing for a second. Because it was true, terrifyingly true. My entire life, guilt had been the leash. Guilt for succeeding. Guilt for leaving home. Guilt for having boundaries. Guilt for saying no. And now I had written proof that my parents understood exactly what they were doing. Vanessa looked almost impressed. "This email changes everything." I stared at the screen. "No," I whispered. "It changes me." Because for the first time in my life, I stopped feeling guilty for protecting myself. The first court hearing was scheduled for a rainy Monday morning in downtown Chicago. I barely slept the night before, not because I feared losing, because I feared seeing my parents as opponents instead of family. That was the cruelest part of the entire situation. The legal documents already proved they manipulated me. The financial records already showed they spent millions. The emails already exposed their strategy. But some wounded part of me still hoped they would walk into court, look at me, and finally realize what they had done. I was still grieving people who were technically alive. Natalie picked me up at 6 in the morning because Vanessa insisted I shouldn't arrive alone. "You ready?" Natalie asked carefully as we drove through gray Chicago streets slick with rain. "No, good, honest answer." I stared out the window. My stomach hurt so badly I thought I might throw up before we even reached the courthouse. When we arrived, reporters weren't outside or anything dramatic like that. That almost made it worse, because betrayal doesn't need cameras to destroy you. The courthouse smelled like old paper, coffee, and stress. Vanessa met us near security carrying 2 massive binders filled with evidence. "Morning," she said calmly. I laughed nervously. "There's nothing good about this morning." "No," she agreed, "but there will be." Then I saw them, my parents, standing near the hallway elevators with their attorney. My mother wore a cream-colored outfit and pearls like she was attending church instead of a hearing where she'd be accused of exploiting her daughter. My father looked irritated more than nervous. And Evan, he wouldn't even look at me. That hurt unexpectedly, more than the money, more than the legal filings. Because somewhere deep inside me, I had still hoped my brother would eventually realize how wrong this all was. Instead, he looked embarrassed to be associated with me. My mother approached first. Of course she did. She always preferred emotional confrontation before witnesses arrived. "Rachel," she whispered softly, eyes already filling with tears. I stood completely still. "You don't have to do this." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because the audacity felt unreal. "You already did this," I replied quietly. Her face tightened. "You're confused." "No," I said. "I'm finally informed." My father stepped closer immediately. "We can still handle this privately." Vanessa appeared beside me instantly. "My client will communicate through counsel." My father visibly disliked that sentence, because manipulators hate barriers, especially professional ones. The hearing room itself was smaller than I expected. No dramatic movie-style courtroom, just fluorescent lights, tired court staff, wooden benches, and tension thick enough to choke on. But the moment the hearing started, everything changed, because suddenly this wasn't family drama anymore, it was evidence. Vanessa opened first, calm, precise, ruthless. She walked the court through the trust structure, the financial transfers, the luxury property purchases, and the psychological manipulation attempts. Then she introduced the emails. The room became very quiet after that, especially when she read my father's line aloud. "She has always been easier to manage when she feels guilty." I looked at my parents. My mother's eyes immediately filled with tears again, but now they looked different to me, not powerful, predictable. Their attorney argued they were simply concerned parents attempting to protect an emotionally overwhelmed lottery winner. Then came the part that made my blood boil. He introduced my therapy records. I physically froze. Vanessa had warned me this might happen. Still, seeing private moments from the hardest year of my life discussed publicly felt violating in a way I can barely describe. Panic attacks after COVID ICU shifts, sleep deprivation, burnout symptoms, grief counseling. My mother sat there pretending concern while the court reviewed the emotional collapse I had trusted her enough to share. I suddenly remembered crying in her lap years earlier after losing 3 patients in one night. She had stroked my hair and whispered, "You can tell me anything." Now those memories were exhibits. The judge reviewed the records carefully, then asked me directly, "Ms. Monroe, are you currently under psychiatric care?" My throat tightened. "Yes, and does your condition impair your ability to make financial decisions?" "No." My mother quietly dabbed tears from her eyes. Performance. Everything was performance. Vanessa stood again. "Your Honor, emotional stress does not equal incompetence. If it did, half the healthcare workers in America would lose legal autonomy." Even the judge's expression shifted slightly at that. Then Vanessa presented the financial evidence. That's when things truly started collapsing for my parents. Because numbers don't cry, numbers don't manipulate, numbers don't pretend. The court reviewed. $2.4 million beach house purchases, luxury vehicles, investment, condos, personal spending, accounts, unauthorized trust distributions, and multiple transactions benefiting everyone except me at one point. The judge looked directly at my father. "Mr. Monroe, why was the beneficiary of the lottery trust still living in a modest rental apartment while trustees purchased luxury property?" My father hesitated, then answered, "We believed modesty and structure were healthier for Rachel emotionally." Even the courtroom clerk looked stunned by that answer. Vanessa didn't miss a beat. "So your daughter funded a beach mansion while being treated as financially unstable enough to remain under supervision." Their attorney objected immediately, but the damage was done. Because for the first time, the situation sounded exactly as insane as it truly was. Then came the moment that changed everything. Vanessa introduced recorded voicemails. My mother's voice filled the courtroom speakers. "You're too emotional to handle this money responsibly." Another voicemail. "You always make bad choices when you're stressed." Then another. "If you fight us publicly, people will start questioning your mental state." Silence. Heavy silence. The judge slowly removed his glasses, and I realized something important. Manipulators sound very different once emotion gets removed from the room. Outside court, those messages once made me feel guilty. Inside court, they sounded controlling, threatening, calculated. My mother finally broke composure then. She started crying openly. Not soft tears, violent sobbing. "I was trying to help her," she cried. "She's my daughter." The old version of me would have folded instantly at that sound. But now, I just felt tired. The judge asked carefully, "Mrs. Monroe, why were preparations being made for competency restriction before your daughter attempted to reclaim financial control?" My mother froze. Because there was no good answer. Their attorney stepped in quickly, but Vanessa already had momentum. Then she introduced the final piece of evidence. A forensic financial review showing my parents personally benefited from over $5 million in trust-related spending and asset transfers. $5 million. Hearing the number spoken aloud made me dizzy. My entire life, I had worried about overdraft fees, grocery budgets, and overtime shifts. Meanwhile, my parents treated my lottery winnings like inheritance they deserved. Then came the moment I will never forget for the rest of my life. The judge looked at me directly. "Ms. Monroe, did you at any point knowingly authorize unrestricted personal use of your lottery funds by the trustees?" I answered honestly. "No." I trusted my parents. That sentence changed the entire room, because suddenly this wasn't about complicated trust law anymore. It was about betrayal. Raw, human, ugly betrayal. The hearing paused for recess shortly afterward. I escaped into the courthouse bathroom and locked myself inside a stall because I thought I might collapse. Natalie found me 20 minutes later sitting on the floor staring at nothing. "You okay?" she whispered. "No, that's fair." I laughed weakly through tears. "They used everything I ever told them." Natalie crouched beside me carefully. "That says something about them, not you." I wiped my face. "I feel stupid." "No," she said firmly. "You feel betrayed. Those are different things." That sentence mattered more than she probably realized, because shame had been eating me alive for weeks. Shame for trusting. Shame for signing documents. Shame for loving people who exploited me. But trusting your family should not require self-defense training. When we returned to court, the atmosphere had shifted completely. My parents knew it too. Their confidence was cracking, especially my father's. He stopped making eye contact with me entirely. Then came cross-examination, and honestly, that's where the illusion of my family finally died. Vanessa questioned my father first, calmly, methodically. Mr. Monroe, did you or did you not describe your daughter as easier to manage through guilt? He shifted uncomfortably. That email was taken out of context. What context improves that sentence? Silence. Vanessa continued. Did your daughter financially support the family prior to winning the lottery? Yes. For how many years? Several. Did she pay medical expenses connected to your surgery? Yes. Did she assist your son financially? Yes. Did she routinely prioritize family needs over personal luxury? Yes. Vanessa paused, then delivered the sentence that shattered him. So the daughter you describe as emotionally unstable was stable enough to financially support your family for years, until she wanted control over her own money. My father had no answer. None. And for the first time in my life, I watched him look small. The final court hearing changed everything. By then, the truth was impossible to hide. Financial records proved my parents had spent millions from the trust on luxury homes, cars, vacations, and personal accounts, while pretending they were protecting me. The judge ruled that full financial control would return to me immediately. The beach house and other assets were frozen for recovery. And for the first time, my parents were officially described as people who had abused their power over me. My mother cried in court. My father looked ashamed, but neither of them truly apologized. Not once. After the hearing, my mother approached me and whispered, "I never wanted this." I looked at her for a long moment before asking the question that had lived inside me for months. "When did you stop loving me more than what I could give you?" She cried harder, but I didn't comfort her, because some pain belongs to the people who create it. Then my father said quietly, "You embarrassed this family." I shook my head. "No, I exposed it," and I walked away. The months after court weren't easy. Yes, I got my money back. Yes, my career survived. Yes, the beach house was sold. But betrayal changes you. I went back to therapy, took time away from work, and slowly rebuilt my life without guilt controlling every decision. I bought a quiet condo in Chicago. I adopted a rescue dog named Benny. And for the first time in years, peace stopped feeling temporary. My brother tried contacting me later. I never answered. Not because I hated him, because boundaries matter. My mother emailed me one last time saying, "I miss you every day." I typed a reply once, "I miss the mother I thought I had," but I never sent it. Because some relationships end long before people stop talking. The biggest lesson I learned was simple. Money doesn't change people. It reveals them. My parents didn't become selfish after the lottery. The money simply exposed who they already were. And me, I stopped confusing guilt with love. I stopped believing family had the right to control me just because we shared blood. Sometimes protecting yourself is the most painful form of self-respect. And sometimes walking away is the first moment you finally become free.